Welcome. Before we begin, take a moment. Set aside whatever is pressing on your mind right now. The emails, the appointments, the noise. Because what you are about to hear was written more than a century ago. And yet it speaks directly to this moment, this very day, and the life you are living right now. The book is called The Majesty of Calmness, and it was written by a man named William George Jordan. Jordan was a writer and editor who lived and worked in America at the turn of the 20th century, a time when the country was accelerating at a pace that felt, to thoughtful people, almost dangerous. Factories were multiplying. Cities were swelling. The telegraph had shrunk the world, and the pressure to keep up, to move faster, to do more and acquire more, was felt by everyone. Sound familiar? Jordan looked at all that speed and noise and restlessness, and he asked a quiet, steady question. He asked what it means to truly live, not to accumulate, not to achieve in the world's narrow sense, but to actually inhabit your own life with purpose, with dignity, with peace. And then he wrote down his answers in a series of short, luminous essays that have comforted and strengthened readers across generations. What you will find in these pages is not a self-help book in the modern sense. There are no 10-step programs, no morning routines, no quick fixes. What Jordan offers instead is something deeper and more lasting. He offers a philosophy of character. He talks about calmness, yes, but also about the corrosive damage of hurry, the quiet power of personal influence, the dignity of standing on your own 2 feet, the surprising gifts hidden inside failure, the practice of doing your best in every small moment, and finally, the royal road to happiness, which he believed every human being has the capacity to walk. His language is beautiful. It is the language of a man who thought carefully, who loved ideas, and who genuinely cared about the people reading his words. We have honored that language here, drawing directly from his own sentences and thoughts, and shaping them into a narration that flows naturally from beginning to end. So settle in. Let the outside world wait for a little while. This is a journey inward, and it begins now. Chapter 1. The Majesty of Calmness. Calmness. It is the rarest quality in human life. Think about that for a moment, and consider how rarely you encounter it in its truest form. Not the blankness of someone who has simply given up, not the forced cheerfulness of someone pretending everything is fine, but the deep, anchored, unshakable peace of a person who is fully alive and fully present, and who has made their peace with whatever life brings. That is what William George Jordan means when he speaks of calmness. It is, he tells us, the poise of a great nature, a life in harmony with itself and its ideals. It is the moral atmosphere of a life that is self-centered in the best sense of that word, centered in the self, not in the opinions of others, not in the shifting winds of circumstance. It is singleness of purpose, absolute confidence and conscious power, ready to be focused in an instant to meet any crisis. Let that sink in for a moment. Ready to be focused in an instant. That is not passivity. That is not weakness. Calmness, as Jordan understands it, is actually a form of concentrated strength. He is careful, right from the beginning, to correct a misunderstanding. The Sphinx, that ancient stone face staring out across the desert, might look calm, but that is not calmness. That is petrifaction. That is death, the silencing of all the energies. And the fatalist, that person who shrugs and says whatever will be, and drifts through life without direction or decision, he is not calm either. He is, Jordan says, the coward slave of his environment. He accepts his life as a rudderless ship drifting on the ocean of time without a compass, without a chart, without a known port he is sailing toward. That is not calmness. That is surrender dressed up as philosophy. The truly calm person is something altogether different. Picture someone who has charted their course in life, who knows where they are headed, and whose hand is always on the helm. Storms can come, fog can close in, night can fall, and hidden reefs can lurk beneath the surface. And still this person is prepared and ready and unshaken. Why? Because they have made a private peace with the nature of their voyage. They know that in the crises of the journey, what is needed above all else is a clear mind and a cool head. They have committed to doing each day the best they can by the light they have, and they will never flinch or falter. Even if they have to tack away from their course for a time, they will never drift. They will always find their way back to the true channel, and they will keep heading toward their harbor. And here is the beautiful, humbling part. When they reach that harbor, and how they reach it does not matter to them. They rest in calmness, knowing they have done their best. And if their best seems to be overthrown or overruled by forces beyond their control, they bow their head, and they bow in calmness, not in bitterness or defeat. Jordan reminds us that no man or woman is permitted to know the full future of their life. God, or life itself, gives us only new beginnings, new wisdom, and new days in which to use the best of our knowledge. And in that limitation, there is actually freedom. You are not responsible for outcomes you cannot control. You are only responsible for the quality of your effort and the peace with which you carry yourself. Where does calmness come from? Jordan answers clearly. It comes from within. It is the peace and restfulness of the depths of our nature. He uses a beautiful image here. Think of the surface of the ocean during a great storm. The waves crash and roil and foam. The fury is real and terrifying. But descend beneath the surface, 100 feet, 200 feet, and the water grows still. Below the storm, there is a calm, unruffled deep. That depth exists in you as well. It can be reached. But you have to cultivate it in the ordinary days, the quiet days, the days when no crisis demands your strength. Because when the great crises come, and they will come, you will draw on whatever you have built below the surface. He speaks directly to you when he says this. When the worries and cares of the day fret you, and begin to wear upon you, and you chafe under the friction, be calm. Stop, rest for a moment, and let calmness and peace assert themselves. If you permit those irritating outside influences to get the better of you, you are confessing your inferiority to them by permitting them to dominate you. Study the disturbing elements, one by one, and bring all the willpower of your nature to bear upon them. And you will find that they will melt into nothingness, like vapors fading before the sun. And then something remarkable happens. The glow of calmness that will then pervade your mind, the tingling sensation and inflow of new strength, may be for you the beginning of a revelation of the supreme calmness that is possible for you. And when you have tasted that, even for a moment, you begin to know what you are capable of. You begin to understand what Jordan is describing. Because then, in some great hour of your life, when you stand face to face with some awful trial, when the structure of your ambition and life's work crumbles in a moment, you will be brave. You can fold your arms calmly, look out undismayed and undaunted upon the ashes of your hope, upon the wreck of what you faithfully built, and with a brave heart and an unfaltering voice you can say, "So let it be. I will build again." That is not the voice of a defeated person. That is the voice of someone who has found the majesty of calmness. He speaks also about the temptation of retaliation. When the tongue of malice and slander persecutes you, when you're tempted for just a moment to strike back, to retaliate, to satisfy the hunger for revenge, be calm. Jordan offers one of his most vivid images here. When the gray heron is pursued by its enemy, the eagle, it does not run. It remains calm, takes a dignified stand, and waits quietly, facing the enemy unmoved. And with the terrific force with which the eagle attacks, that king of birds is often impaled and run through on quiet, lance-like bill of the heron. The means a person takes to kill another's character becomes the suicide of their own. No one in the world ever attempted to wrong another without being injured in return. Somehow, somewhere, sometime, the only weapon of offense that nature seems to recognize is the boomerang. Nature keeps her books admirably. She puts down every item and closes all accounts finally, but she does not always balance them at the end of the month. To the calm person, revenge is so far beneath them that they cannot reach it even by stooping. When injured, they do not retaliate. They wrap around themselves the royal robes of calmness, and they go quietly on their way. Jordan speaks of the hardest test of all. When the hand of death touches the one we hold dearest, when it paralyzes our energy and eclipses the sun of our life, the calmness that has been accumulating in long years becomes in a moment our refuge, our reserve strength. This is why you build it now, in the ordinary days. Not because you want to be emotionally distant, but because when the deepest griefs arrive, you'll need something that no external comfort can provide. He speaks, too, about the moral challenge of watching wickedness prosper. It requires real courage to see, without flinching, material prosperity coming to dishonest men and women, to see politicians rise to power through trickery, to see virtue in rags and vice in velvets, to see ignorance rewarded and knowledge overlooked. These puzzles of life do not unsettle the person who is truly calm. They are living their life as best they can, and they are not worrying about the problems of justice, whose solution must be left to forces greater than themselves. And Jordan closes this opening chapter with a vision of what a fully calm person looks like in the world. Calmness cannot be acquired in isolation. It must come as the culmination of a series of virtues. It requires a higher standard of living, a great realizing sense of the privilege and dignity of life, a higher and nobler conception of individuality. With calmness permeating an individual, that person becomes able to retire more into themselves, away from the noise and confusion and strife of the world, which come to their ears only as faint, far-off rumblings, like the tumult of a city heard only as a buzzing hum by a person in a balloon. They are not cut off from the world. They are not indifferent to it. They are intensely interested in all that concerns the welfare of humanity. But their calmness is a holy of holies into which they can retreat from the world to get the strength to live in the world. And that is the crowning achievement of self-control, the full glory of individuality, the majesty of calmness. Chapter 2. Hurry, the scourge of America. If the first chapter gave you a vision of what is possible at the deepest level of human character, this second chapter is a sharp and honest diagnosis of the great enemy standing in the way of that possibility. And the enemy's name is hurry. Jordan opens with a striking thought. He says the first sermon in the world was preached at the creation. It was a divine protest against hurry. It was a divine object lesson of perfect law, perfect plan, perfect order, perfect method. 6 days of work carefully planned, scheduled, and completed, followed by rest. Whether you take that story literally or figuratively, as successive days or as ages spanning millions of years matters very little if you learn the lesson it is offering. Nature, Jordan observes, is very un-American. Nature never hurries. Every phase of her working shows plan, calmness, reliability, and the absence of hurry. And hurry, he says, always implies lack of definite method, confusion, impatience with slow growth. He reaches back to the ancient Tower of Babel, that legendary first skyscraper, and calls a failure caused by hurry. The workers mistook their arrogant ambition for inspiration. They had too many builders and no architect. They thought to make up the lack of a head by a superfluity of hands. And this, Jordan tells us, is a characteristic of hurry. It seeks to make energy a substitute for a clearly defined plan. The result is as hopeless as trying to transform a hobby horse into a real steed by riding it more briskly. There's a critical distinction Jordan draws here, one worth sitting with. Hurry is a counterfeit of haste. They look similar from the outside. Both involve moving quickly, but they are entirely different in nature. Haste has an ideal, a distinct aim to be realized by the quickest and most direct methods. Haste has a single compass upon which it relies for direction. Hurry says, I must move faster, and so it gets three compasses, all of them different, and tries to be guided by all of them at once, hoping one of them will be right. Hurry never realizes that slow, careful foundation work is the quickest in the end. And then Jordan makes a claim that hits hard. Hurry has ruined more Americans than any other word in the vocabulary of life. It is the scourge of America, both a cause and a result of a high-pressure civilization. And hurry is a master disguise. It assumes so many masquerades that its identity is not always recognized. What does hurry cost? Everything that matters most. In the race for wealth, people sacrifice time, energy, health, home, happiness, and honor. Everything that money cannot buy. The very things that money can never bring back. Jordan paints this in domestic terms that are still painfully familiar. Men, in their desire to provide for the future happiness of their families, sacrifice the present happiness of their wives and children on the altar of hurry. They forget that their place in the home should be something greater than being merely the person who pays the bills. They expect consideration and thoughtfulness that they are not themselves giving. He speaks with unusual boldness here about the double standard applied to men and women in domestic life. We hear too much, he says, about a wife's duties to her husband and too little about the other side of the question. Why should a woman have to look up with a timid glance at her husband's face to size up his mood before speaking? Has not her day, too, been one of care and responsibility? Is the man of the house really so fragile that he must be pampered and handled with that degree of delicacy? Jordan finds no dignity in that arrangement and no happiness in it either. In the wider world, hurry produces corruption. Politicians standing by while a city is poisoned with foul water, waiting to see where they come on an appropriations deal. Entire armies sacrificed as incidents in the hurry for wealth and power. These are not small costs. They are the cost of a civilization that has confused speed with progress. He calls his era the age of the hothouse. The element of natural growth is pushed to one side, and the hothouse and the force pump are substituted. And nature, he says, looks on with tolerance and says to her foolish children, so far you may go, but no further. The educational system comes in for sharp criticism. Children are forced through a series of studies that sweep the circle of all human wisdom. They are given everything that the ambitious ignorance of the age can force into their minds. They are taught everything except the essentials, which Jordan identifies as how to use their senses and how to think. Their minds become congested by a great mass of undigested facts, and still the cruel, barbarous forcing continues. He says, and you can feel the heat in these words. You watch it until it seems you cannot stand a moment longer, and you instinctively put out your hand and say, stop. This modern slaughter, the innocents, must not go on. And then education smiles suavely and waves her hand complacently toward her thousands of knowledge prisons over the country and says, who are you that dares speak a word against our sacred school system? Because education is in a hurry. Because it fails in 15 years to do what half the time should accomplish by better methods. It should not be too boastful. Incompetence is not always a reason for pride. And so the children are hurried into 100 textbooks, then into ill health, then into colleges, then into a diploma, then into life, with a dazed mind, untrained and unfitted for the real duties of living. Hurry is the death blow to calmness, to dignity, to poise. The old-time courtesy went out when the new-time hurry came in. Hurry is a father dyspepsia. In the rush of national life, the bolting of food has become a national vice. The words quick lunches, Jordan says, might properly be placed on thousands of headstones in our cemeteries. Man forgets that he is the only animal that dines. The others merely feed. Why does he give up his right to dine and go to the end of the line with the mere feeders? His self-respecting stomach rebels and expresses its indignation by indigestion. Then a person goes through life with a little bottle of Pepsin tablets in their vest pocket, another victim to the craze for speed. Hurry means a breakdown of the nerves. It is the royal road to nervous prostration. And then Jordan offers one of his most beautiful and enduring observations. Everything that is great in life is the product of slow growth. The newer and greater and higher and nobler the work, the slower its growth and the surer its lasting success. Mushrooms attain their full power in a night. Oaks require decades. A fad lives its life in a few weeks. A philosophy lives through generations and centuries. If you are sure you are right, do not let the voice of the world or of friends or of family swerve you for a moment from your purpose. Accept slow growth if it must be slow, and know that the results must come as you accept the long, lonely hours of night, with absolute assurance that the heavy, leaden moments must bring the morning. This is not a counsel of laziness. It is a counsel of patience and of depth. It is a recognition that the things most worth having cannot be rushed into existence. They must be grown. And so Jordan concludes with a call to action that is, fittingly, a call to stillness. Let us as individuals banish the word hurry from our lives. Let us care for nothing so much that we would pay honor and self-respect as the price of hurrying it. Let us cultivate calmness, restfulness, poise, and sweetness, doing our best, bearing all things as bravely as we can, living our lives undisturbed by the prosperity of the wicked or the malice of the envious. Let us not be impatient, chafing at delay, fretting over failure, wearying over results, and weakening under opposition. Let us ever turn our face toward the future with confidence and trust, with the calmness of a life in harmony with itself, true to its ideals and slowly and constantly progressing toward their realization. Let us see that cowardly word hurry in all its most degenerating phases. Let us see that it ever kills truth, loyalty, and thoroughness. And let us determine, day by day, to seek more and more to substitute for the calmness and repose of a true life nobly lived. Chapter 3. The Power of Personal Influence. Here is something worth considering as you move through your days. Every conversation you have, every room you walk into, every moment you spend with another human being, you are doing something. You are exerting an influence. You cannot stop it. You cannot choose not to. The only choice available to you is what kind of influence it will be. This is a central insight of Jordan's 3rd chapter, and is one of the most quietly powerful ideas in the entire book. He begins by saying that the only responsibility a person cannot evade in this life is the one they think of least, and that is their personal influence. When a person is consciously trying to impress those around them, when they are on their best behavior, posturing and performing, their conscious influence is woefully small. But their unconscious influence, the silent, subtle radiation of their personality, the effect of their words and acts, the trifles they never consider, is tremendous. Every moment of life, a person is changing to some degree the life of the whole world. Every man and woman has an atmosphere which is affecting every other. So silent and so unconscious is this influence working that we may entirely forget it exists. Jordan reaches for forces of nature to illustrate his point. Heat, light, electricity, and gravitation are all silent and invisible. We never see them directly. We only know they exist by the effects they produce. In all of nature, the wonders of the seen are dwarfed into insignificance when compared with the majesty and glory of the unseen. The great sun itself does not supply enough heat and light to sustain animal and vegetable life on earth. We are dependent for nearly half of our light and heat upon the stars, and the greater part of that life-giving energy comes from stars invisible to the naked eye millions of miles from the earth. In 1,000 ways, nature constantly seeks to lead us to a keener and deeper realization of the power and the wonder of the invisible. And so it is with the invisible power each person carries with them everywhere they go. Into the hands of every individual is given a marvelous power for good or for evil, the silent, unconscious, unseen influence of their life. This is simply the constant radiation of what a person really is, not what they pretend to be. Every person, by their mere living, is radiating sympathy or sorrow or morbidness or cynicism or happiness or hope. Life is a state of constant radiation and absorption. To exist is to radiate. To exist is to be the recipient of radiations. You know this to be true, even if you have never thought about it in these terms. Think about the people in your life and the effect they have on you when you spend time with them. There are men and women whose presence seems to radiate sunshine, cheer, and optimism. You feel calmed and rested and restored in a moment to a new and stronger faith in humanity. There are others who focus in an instant all your latent distrust, morbidness, and rebellion against life. Without knowing why, you chafe and fret in their presence. You lose your bearings on life and its problems. Your moral compass is disturbed and made unreliable, the way a ship's magnetic needle is deflected when it passes near great mountains of iron ore. Jordan offers a gallery of human types, each vivid and recognizable. There are people who float through life like icebergs, cold, reserved, unapproachable, and self-contained. In their presence, you involuntarily draw your wraps closer around you as you wonder who left the door open. These refrigerated human beings have a depressing influence on all those who fall under the spell of their radiated chilliness. But there are other natures, warm and helpful and genial, who are like the Gulf Stream, following their own course, flowing undaunted and undismayed through an ocean of colder waters. Their presence brings warmth and life and the glow of sunshine, the joyous, stimulating breath of spring. There are people who are like malarious swamps, poisonous and depressing by their very presence. They make the atmosphere of their own homes heavy and oppressive. The sound of children's play is stilled, and the ripples of laughter are frozen in their presence. They go through life as if each day were a new big funeral, and they were always the chief mourners. There are other people who seem like the ocean, constantly bracing and stimulating, giving new drafts of tonic life and strength by their very presence. And there are the insincere, the ones whose wondrous interest in your welfare seems to appear only when they need something from you, who put on a property smile so suddenly when it serves their purpose that it seems the smile must be connected with some electric button concealed in their clothes. Their voice has a simulated cordiality that long training may have made almost natural, but they never play their part absolutely true. The mask will slip. Their cleverness cannot teach their eyes a look of sterling honesty. They may deceive some people, but they cannot deceive all. There's a subtle power of revelation which makes us say, well, I cannot explain how it is, but I know that person is not honest. Now comes the moral weight of all this observation. A person cannot escape for one moment from this radiation of their character, this constantly weakening or strengthening of others. They cannot evade the responsibility by saying it is unconscious, because here is the extraordinary truth. You can select the qualities you will permit to be radiated. You can cultivate sweetness, calmness, trust, generosity, truth, justice, loyalty, and nobility. You can make them vitally active in your character. And by these qualities, you will constantly affect the world. This is the encouragement Jordan offers to honest souls who feel discouraged because they seem to be doing so little good in the world. The trifles we never notice may be links in the chain of some great purpose. He gives a wonderful example spanning 60 years. In 1797, William Godwin wrote a collection of essays that influenced Thomas Malthus to write his famous work on population, published in 1798. And Malthus's book suggested to Charles Darwin a point of view upon which he devoted many years of his life, resulting in 1859 in the publication of The Origin of Species, the most influential book of the 19th century, a book that revolutionized all science. These were but 3 links of influence extending over 60 years. And it might be possible to trace that genealogy of influence back further still, from Godwin, through generation after generation, to the word or act of some shepherd in early Britain, watching his flock upon the hills, living his quiet life, and died with the thought that he had done nothing to help the world. The changes in our varying moods are all recorded in the delicate barometers of the lives of others. We are not islands. We are not sealed off from one another. We are in constant, invisible, inescapable communion. And so Jordan calls us to a higher standard of self-awareness. Let our influence filter through human love and sympathy. Let us not merely be an influence. Let us be an inspiration. By our very presence, let us be a tower of strength to the hungering human souls around us. To make our influence felt, we must live our faith and practice what we believe. A magnet does not attract iron as iron. It must first convert that iron into another magnet before it can attract it. It is useless for a parent to try to teach gentleness to their children when they themselves are cross and irritable. A child told to be truthful, who watches a parent lie cleverly to escape some small social unpleasantness, is not going to cling very zealously to truth. The parent's words say, do not lie. The influence of the parent's life says, do lie. No person can ever isolate themselves to evade this constant power of influence, any more than a single corpuscle can rebel and escape from the general course of the blood. No individual is so insignificant as to be without influence. And so we have both a right and a responsibility. We have a duty to others and a duty to ourselves. In justice to ourselves, we should refuse to live in an atmosphere that keeps us from living our best. If the personal influence of others is like a noxious vapor that kills our best impulses, and if we can possibly remove ourselves from that influence without forsaking our duties, we should do so. If we cannot move, then we must take strong doses of moral quinine to counteract the malaria of influence. It is not what those around us do for us that counts. It is what they are to us. We carry our houseplant from one window to another to give them the proper heat, light, air, and moisture. Should we not be at least as careful with ourselves? Chapter 4. The dignity of self-reliance. There is an important distinction at the heart of this chapter, and Jordan states it plainly in the very first lines. Self-confidence without self-reliance is as useless as a cooking recipe without food. Self-confidence sees the possibilities of the individual. Self-reliance realizes them. Self-confidence sees the angel in the unhewn block of marble. Self-reliance carves out for itself. What is the difference? Self-confidence is the vision. Self-reliance is the action. Self-confidence believes it can be done. Self-reliance does the work. You can have all the confidence in the world and still be helpless if you have never cultivated the habit of depending on yourself. The self-reliant person says, and believe in the truth of this, no one can realize my possibilities for me but me. No one can make me good or evil but myself. This person works out their own salvation financially, socially, mentally, physically, and morally. Life is an individual problem that each person must solve for themselves. Nature accepts no vicarious sacrifice, no vicarious service. Nature never recognizes a proxy vote. She has nothing to do with middlemen. She deals only with the individual. Nature is constantly seeking to show each person that they're their own best friend or their own worst enemy. And nature gives the individual the option to choose which they will be. Jordan offers illustrations that are simple but bracing. All the athletic exercises in the world are of no value to a person unless they personally do the work. They can never develop their muscles by sending their valet to a gymnasium. The medicine chests of the world are powerless to help anyone until that person reaches out and takes to themselves what is needed for their individual weakness. All the religions of the world are but speculations and morals, mere theories of salvation, until the individual realizes that they must save themselves by relying on a law of truth as they see it, and living in harmony with it as fully as they can. Religion is not a Pullman car with soft cushioned seats, where you simply pay for your ticket and someone else does all the rest. In religion, as in all great things, the individual is thrown back on their self-reliance. They should accept all helps, but they must live their own life. They should not feel like a mere passenger. They are the engineer, and the train is their life. If we merely drift through existence, we lose all that is best, all that is greatest, all that is divine. All that others can do for us is give us opportunity. We must be prepared for that opportunity when it comes, and go after it and find it when it does not come. Otherwise, that opportunity means nothing. Life is a succession of opportunities. They are for good or evil as we make them. Here is one of Jordan's most enduring images. Many of the alchemists of old believed they lacked but one element. If they could obtain that one missing thing, they could transmute the baser metals into pure gold. It is so with character. There are individuals with rare mental gifts and delicate spiritual discernment who fail utterly in life because they lack the one element of self-reliance. That one quality would unite all their energies and focus them into strength and power. Without it, a person is weak, hesitating, and doubting in all they do. They fear to take a decisive step because they dread failure, or because they are waiting for someone to tell them what to do, or because they dare not act on their own best judgment. And in their cowardice and conceit, they see all their lack of success as caused by others. They are not appreciated. They are not recognized. They are kept down. They feel that in some subtle way society is conspiring against them. They grow almost vain as they think that no one has had such poverty, such sorrow, such affliction, such failure as has come to them. The self-reliant person is the opposite of all this. They seek to discover and conquer the weakness within themselves that keeps them from what they hold dearest. They look inside for the power to battle against all outside influences. They realize that all the greatest men and women in history, in every phase of human effort, have been those who had to fight against the odds of sickness, suffering, and sorrow. To the self-reliant person, defeat is no more than passing through a tunnel. They know they must emerge again into the sunlight. Jordan extends this to nations. The nation that is strongest is the one that is most self-reliant, the one that contains within its boundaries all that its people need. If a nation's ports are blockaded and it does not have within itself the necessities of life and the elements of its continued progress, it is weak, held by the enemy, and it is only a matter of time before it must surrender. Its independence is in proportion to its self-reliance. What is true of nations is true of individuals. He reaches into history for a cautionary example. The wealth and prosperity of ancient Rome, relying on slaves to do the real work of the nation, proved to be the nation's downfall. The constant dependence on the captives of war to do the 1,000 details of life for them killed self-reliance in the nation and in the individual. And through weakened self-reliance and the increased opportunity for idle, luxurious ease that came with it, Rome, a nation of fighters, became a nation of people who had surrendered the very qualities that had made them great. As we depend on others to do those things we should do for ourselves, our self-reliance weakens, and our powers and our control then become continuously less. To be great, a person must be self-reliant, not in all things, perhaps, but in the one thing in which they will be great. And this self-reliance is not the self-sufficiency of conceit. It is not arrogance. It is daring to stand alone. Be an oak, not a vine. Be ready to give support, but do not crave it. Do not be dependent on it. To develop your true self-reliance, you must see from the very beginning that life is a battle you must fight for yourself. You must be your own soldier. You cannot buy a substitute. You cannot win a reprieve. The world is busy with its own cares, sorrows, and joys, and pays little heed to you. There is but one great password to success. It is self-reliance. Jordan is practical about how this is built. If you would learn to converse, put yourself into positions where you must speak. If you would conquer your morbidness, mingle with the bright people around you, no matter how difficult it may be. If you desire the power that someone else possesses, do not envy their strength. Do not dissipate your energy by weakly wishing their force were yours. Emulate the process by which it became theirs. Depend on your self-reliance. Pay the price for it, and equal power may be yours. The individual must look upon themselves as an investment of untold possibilities, if rightly developed. A mind whose resources can never be known except by going down into it and bringing out what is hidden. And here is one of the most quietly revolutionary ideas in the book. Man can develop self-reliance by seeking constantly to surpass himself. We try too much to surpass others. If we seek ever to surpass ourselves, we are moving on a uniform line of progress that gives a harmonious, unifying quality to our growth in all its parts. Jordan quotes a wonderful example. Daniel Morel, once president of a great rail works employing 7,000 men, was asked the secret of his company's success. He said, "We have no secret but this. We always try to beat our last batch of rails. That is the true competition, not competition against others, which has the danger of tempting us to sacrifice real worth for mere appearance, but competition of the individual with themselves, their present seeking to excel their past. This is real growth from within. Self-reliance develops it, and it develops self-reliance." And Jordan closes with a word of reassurance that has nothing soft or sentimental about it. True friendship is rare, and its great value is in a crisis. Like a lifeboat, many a boasted friend has proved a leaking, worthless lifeboat when the storm of adversity came. In those great crises of life, a person is strong only as they are strong from within, and the more they depend on themselves, the stronger they will become, and the stronger they become, the more able they will be to help others in the hour of need. Their very life will be a constant help and a strength to others, as they become to the world a living lesson of the dignity of self-reliance. Chapter 5. Failure as a Success. There is a chapter in this book that has the power to change the way you see your entire past. This is it. Jordan's meditation on failure is not a pep talk. It is not the easy reassurance that everything happens for a reason. It is something deeper and more honest than that. It is a careful, evidence-based argument that what we call failure is often the very mechanism by which the greatest successes in human history were made possible. He opens with a frank acknowledgement of the difficulty. It often requires heroic courage to face fruitless effort, to take up the broken strand of a life's work, to look bravely toward the future, and proceed undaunted on our way. He is not pretending that failure is easy. He is not suggesting you should feel good about it. He is saying that what, to our eyes, may seem hopeless failure is often but the dawning of a greater success. It may contain in its debris the foundation material of a mighty purpose, or the revelation of new and higher possibilities. He begins with a story. Some years ago, a proposal was made to send logs from Canada to New York by a new method. The plan was to bind great logs together by cables and iron girders and tow the cargo as a raft. When the novel craft neared New York and success seemed assured, a terrible storm arose. In the fury of the tempest, the iron band snapped and the angry waters scattered the logs far and wide. A clear, complete, and humiliating failure. But the chief of the hydrographic department in Washington heard of the experiment and immediately sent word to shipmasters the world over, urging them to watch for these logs and to note the precise location of each one in latitude and longitude and the time the observation was made. Hundreds of captains, sailing over the waters of the earth, noted the logs in the Atlantic Ocean, in the Mediterranean, in the South Seas. Hundreds of reports were made over a period of weeks and months. When those observations were carefully collated, systematized, and tabulated, Discoveries were made about the course of ocean currents that would otherwise have been impossible. The loss of that raft was not a real failure. It led to one of the great discoveries in modern marine geography and navigation. He turns to the alchemists. We are disposed to speak in a patronizing tone of the follies of those ancient practitioners who spent their lives trying to transmute baser metals into gold. But their failure to achieve that goal resulted in the birth of chemistry. They did not succeed in what they attempted, but they brought into use the natural processes of sublimation, filtration, distillation, and crystallization. They invented the alembic and the retort and the sand bath and the water bath and other valuable instruments. To them is due the discovery of antimony, sulfuric ether and phosphorus, the cupellation of gold and silver, the determining of the properties of saltpetre and its use in gunpowder, and the discovery of the distillation of essential oils. This was a success of failure, a wondrous process of nature for the highest growth, a mighty lesson of comfort, strength, and encouragement. Columbus, Christopher Columbus. The name itself is woven into the myth of discovery and triumph. But Jordan makes a striking point. Columbus failed absolutely. His ingenious reasoning led him to believe that by sailing westward he would reach India. Every indigenous person in America carries in their name the word Indian, the perpetuation of the memory of the failure of Columbus. He did not reach India. The souvenirs he brought back to Spain as proof of his success actually attested to his failure. But the discovery of America was a greater success than any finding of a backdoor route to India could ever have been. David Livingstone. He spent more than 3 years studying with all his energies concentrated on a single aim, to spread the gospel in China. The hour came when he was ready to set out with noble enthusiasm for his chosen work. And then word came from China that the Opium War would make it folly to attempt to enter the country. Disappointment and failure did not long daunt him. He offered himself as a missionary to Africa, and he was accepted. His glorious failure to reach China opened a whole continent to light and truth. His preparation proved an ideal foundation for his labors as physician, explorer, teacher, and evangelist in the wilds of Africa. Sir Walter Scott. Business reverses, and the failure of his partner threw upon the broad shoulders and the still broader honor that great man a burden of debt that forced him to write with intensity and urgency he might never have found in ease and comfort. The failure spurred him to almost superhuman effort. The masterpieces of Scottish historic fiction that have thrilled and entertained and uplifted millions of readers are a glorious monument standing in the field of a seeming failure. And Millet, the painter of the Angelus, when he worked on that almost divine canvas in which the very air seems to pulse with the regenerating essence of spiritual reverence, he was painting against time, painting against sorrow, racing against death. His brush strokes were put on in the early morning hours before going his menial duties as a railway porter, and the same kind of dust perpetuated on his canvas. Those strokes meant strength and food and medicine for the dying wife he adored. The art failure that had cast him into the depths of poverty unified, with marvelous intensity, all the finer elements of his nature. This rare spiritual unity, this purging of all the dross of triviality as he passed through the furnace of poverty, trial, and sorrow, gave eloquence to his brush and enabled him to paint as no prosperity could ever have made possible. Failure, Jordan tells us, is often the turning point, the pivot of circumstance that swings us to higher levels. It may not be financial success. It may not be fame. It may be new drafts of spiritual, moral, or mental inspiration that will change you for all the later years of your life. Life is not really what comes to us, but what we get from it. And here Jordan asks the central question, the only question really that any of us must face, whether we have had wealth or poverty, failure or success. What counts is how we let it affect us. If trial and deprivation have left you better, truer, nobler, then poverty has been riches, and failure has been a success. If wealth has come and made you vain, arrogant, contemptuous, and uncharitable, closing from you all the tenderness of life and all the channels of higher development, making you the mere custodian of a money bag, then wealth has lied to you. It has been failure, not success. It has not been riches. It has been dark, treacherous poverty that stole from you even yourself. All things become for us, then what we take from them. Failure is one of God's educators. It is experience leading us to higher things. It is a revelation of a way, a path hitherto unknown to us. The best people in the world, those who have made the greatest real successes, look back with serene happiness on their failures. The turning of the face of time shows all things in a wondrously illuminated and satisfying perspective. Our highest hopes are often destroyed to prepare us for better things. The failure of the caterpillar is the birth of the butterfly. The passing of the bud is the becoming of the rose. The death or destruction of the seed is the prelude to its resurrection as wheat. It is at night, in the darkest hours, those preceding dawn, that plants grow best, that they most increase in size. May this not be one of nature's gentle showings to us of the times when we grow best, of the darkness of failure that is evolving into the sunlight of success. There is no honest and true work, carried along with constant and sincere purpose, that ever really fails. If it sometimes seems to be wasted effort, it will prove a new lesson of how to walk. The seeker of our failures will prove to be the inspiration of possible successes. A person living with the highest aims, ever as best they can, in continuous harmony with them, is a success. No matter what statistics of failure a nearsighted and half-blind world of critics may lay at their door. High ideals and noble efforts will make seeming failures into trifles that need not dishearten us. They should prove sources of new strength. Birds cannot fly best with the wind, but against it. Ships do not progress in calm, when the sails flap idly against the unstrained masts. The alchemy of nature, superior to that of any ancient practitioner, constantly transmutes the baser metals of failure into the later pure gold of higher success. If the mind of the worker is kept true, constant, and untiring in the service, and if they have that sublime courage that defies fate to its worst while they do their best. Chapter 6. Doing our best at all times. There is a moment in every person's life, or perhaps several such moments, when the enormous complexity of existence becomes almost paralyzing, when the questions pile up faster than the answers, when the weight of what you do not know and cannot know becomes genuinely overwhelming. What is the right thing? What is justice? Why do the good suffer and the wicked prosper? Is any of this worth it? Jordan understands this. He begins this chapter by acknowledging that life is a wondrously complex problem for the individual, until someday, in a moment of illumination, they awaken to the great realization that they can make it simple. Never quite simple, he is honest about that, but always simpler. There are 1,000 mysteries of right and wrong that baffle the wise people of every age. There are depths in the great fundamental questions of the human race that no plummet of philosophy has ever sounded. There are wild cries of honest hunger for truth that seek to pierce the silence beyond the grave. but to them echo back only a repetition of their unanswered cries. To all of us at times comes that great note of questioning despair. If there really is a God, if eternal justice really rules the world, why should life be as it is? Why do some people starve while others feast? Why does virtue often languish in the shadow, while vice triumphs in the sunshine? Why does failure so often pursue honest effort, while the success that comes from trickery is greeted with the world's applause? How is it that the loving Father one family is taken by death, while the worthless burden of another is spared? Why is there so much unnecessary pain and sorrow and suffering? Why should there be any? Jordan does not pretend these questions have clean answers. He says plainly that neither philosophy nor religion can give any final satisfactory answer that is capable of absolute proof. There is ever, even after the best explanations, a residuum of the unexplained. We must fall back on faith, not the faith of passivity, but the faith of a person who says, I will not be disconcerted by these problems of life. I will not permit them to plunge me into doubt and cloud my life with vagueness and uncertainty. And then Jordan articulates what he calls a simple working faith. It goes something like this. This glorious creation, with its millions of wondrous phenomena pulsing ever in harmony with eternal law, must have a creator. That creator must be omniscient and omnipotent, but that creator cannot, in justice, demand of any creature more than the best that individual can give, and therefore I will do each day, in every moment, the best I can by the light I have. I will ever seek more light, more perfect illumination of truth, and ever live as best I can in harmony with the truth as I see it. If failure comes, I will meet it bravely. If my pathway lies in the shadow of trial, sorrow, and suffering, I shall have the restful peace and the calm strength of one who has done their best, who can look back upon the past with no pang of regret, who has heroic courage in facing the results, whatever they be, knowing that they could not have made them different. This is not a passive philosophy. This is not resignation. It is the most demanding kind of engagement with life, the commitment to give your full effort to every moment, without the comfort of guaranteed outcomes. On this foundation, Jordan says, a person may erect any superstructure of religion or philosophy that they conscientiously can. This simple working faith opposes no creed, substitutes for none. It is simply a primary belief, a citadel, a refuge where the individual can retire for strength when the battle of life grows hard. But a mere theory of life that remains only a theory, he reminds us, is about as useful as a gilded menu is to a starving sailor on a raft in mid-ocean. It is irritating but not stimulating. No rule for higher living will help a person in the slightest until they reach out and appropriate for themselves, until they make it practical in daily life, until that seed of theory blossoms into 1,000 flowers of thought and word and act. If a person honestly seeks to live their best at all times, that determination is visible in every moment of their living. No trifle is too insignificant to reflect their principle of living. The sun illuminates and beautifies a fallen leaf by the roadside as impartially as a towering mountain peak in the Alps. Every drop of water in the ocean is an epitome of the chemistry of the whole ocean. Every drop is subject to precisely the same laws that dominate the infinity of billions of drops that make the miracle we call the sea. No matter how humble the calling of the individual, how uninteresting and dull the round of duties, they should do their best. They should dignify what they are doing by the mind they put into it. They should vitalize whatever little power or energy or ability or opportunity they have, in order to prepare themselves to be equal to higher privileges when those privileges come. This will never lead to that weak content that is satisfied with whatever falls to one's lot. It will instead fill the mind with that divine discontent that cheerfully accepts the best merely as a temporary substitute for something better. The person who is seeking ever do their best is keen, active, wide awake, and aggressive. They are ever watchful of themselves and trifles. Their standard is not what will the world say, but is it worthy of me? Jordan offers a beautiful example in Edwin Booth, one of the greatest actors on the American stage, who would never permit himself to assume an ungraceful attitude even in his hours of privacy. In this simple thing, he lived his best. On the stage, every movement was one of unconscious grace. Those in his company who were conscious of their motions were the awkward ones, who were seeking in public to undo or conceal the carelessness of their private moments. Living at one's best is constant preparation for instant use. It can never make one overprecise, self-conscious, or priggish. Education in its highest sense is conscious training of mind or body to act unconsciously. It is the conscious formation of mental habits, not the mere acquisition of information. And then Jordan speaks about one of the great self-deceptions, the worship of luck. The person who believes that all others are lucky and that whatever they attempt will fail. They do not realize the untiring energy, the unremitting concentration, the heroic courage, the sublime patience that is the actual secret of other people's success. Those people's luck was that they had prepared themselves to be equal to their opportunity when it came. Their own opportunity came and departed unnoted. It would not wake them from their dreams of untold wealth falling into their lap. So they grow discouraged, envy those they should emulate, and move through life just ever sampling lines of activity, never fully committing to any of them. The honest, faithful struggler should always realize that failure is but an episode in a true person's life, never the whole story. It is never easy to meet, and no philosophy can make it so. But the steadfast courage to master conditions instead of complaining of them will always help. It will always enable a person to get the best out of what they have. One of the most weakening elements in the individual is the surrender to the oncoming of years. How many people say of some inspiring new idea, "That is good. I am glad to have it for my children. I would have been happy to have had some such help when I was at school, but it is too late for me. I am a person advanced in years." Jordan calls this blind closing of life to wondrous possibilities. The knell of lost opportunity is never tolled in this life. It is never too late to recognize truth and to live by it. It requires only greater effort, closer attention, deeper consecration. But the impossible does not exist for the person who is self-confident and willing to pay the price in time and struggle. And then he gives us a list that should stir something deep in anyone who has ever used the excuse of age to stop growing. Socrates, when his hair had whitened with the snow of age, learned to play on instruments of music. Cato at 80 began his study of Greek. Plutarch, at the same age, began his first lessons in Latin with the enthusiasm of a boy. The character of man, Theophrastus' greatest work, was begun on his 90th birthday. Chaucer's Canterbury Tales was the work of the poet's declining years. Ronsard, the father of French poetry, did not develop his poetic faculty until nearly 50. Benjamin Franklin at that age had just taken his really first steps of importance in philosophical pursuits. Arnauld, the theologian, translated Josephus in his 80th year. Hobbes, the English philosopher, published his version of the Odyssey in his 87th year, and his Iliad 1 year later. Chevreul, the great French scientist, was busy, keen, and active when death called him at the age of 103. These people did not fear age. Their names from a great roll of those who defied the years should be voices of hope and encouragement to every individual whose courage and confidence is weak. The path of truth, higher living, and truer development in every phase of life is never shut from the individual until they close it themselves. And nature, in her beautiful love and tenderness, says to the person weakened and worn and weary with a struggle, do in the best way you can the trifle that is under your hand at this moment. Do it in the best spirit of preparation for the future. Bring all the light of knowledge from all the past to aid you. Do this, and you have done your best. The past is forever closed to you. No worry, no struggle, no suffering, no agony of despair can alter it. Turn all that past, with sad hours and weakness and sin and wasted opportunities, as light in confidence and hope upon the future. Make each trifle of this present a new past it will be joy to look back to. Each trifle a grander, nobler, and more perfect preparation for what lies ahead. The present and the future you can make from it are yours. The past has gone back, with all its messages and all its records, to the God who loaned you the golden moments to use in obedience to that eternal law. Chapter 7. The Royal Road to Happiness. We come now to the final chapter, and Jordan opens it with one of the most sobering statements in the book. Prince Bismarck, one of the greatest statesmen of the 19th century, a man who held an empire in his fingers, who possessed wealth and fame and honors and power and influence and prosperity and triumph across 83 years of life, said at the end of it, during my whole life, I have not had 24 hours of happiness, not one day of happiness. How is that possible? And more importantly, what does it tell us about where happiness actually comes from? Happiness is the greatest paradox in nature. It can grow in any soil. It can live under any conditions. It defies environment. It comes from within. It is a revelation of the depths of the inner life, as light and heat proclaim the sun from which they radiate. Happiness consists not of having, but of being, not of possessing, but of enjoying. It is a warm glow of a heart at peace with itself. A martyr at the stake may have happiness that a king on his throne might envy. Man is the creator of his own happiness. It is the aroma of a life lived in harmony with high ideals. For what a person has, they may be dependent on others. What they are rests with them alone. What they obtain in life is acquisition. What they attain is growth. Jordan is careful to distinguish happiness from its many imitators. He calls them the understudies gratification, satisfaction, content, and pleasure. They simulate the appearance of happiness rather than emulating its method. Gratification is a harmony between our desires and our possessions. It is ever incomplete. It is a thankful acceptance of part. It may be an element in happiness, but in itself, it is not happiness. Satisfaction is perfect identity of our desires and our possessions. It exists only so long as that perfect union can be preserved. But every realized ideal gives birth to new ideals. Every step forward reveals large domains of the unattained. Every feeding stimulates new appetites. Then desires and possessions are no longer equal. New cravings call forth new activities. The balance is destroyed, and dissatisfaction re-enters. A person might possess everything tangible in the world and still not be happy, because happiness is the satisfying of the soul, not of the mind or the body alone. Content, Jordan argues, is a greatly overrated virtue. It is a kind of diluted despair. It is the feeling with which we continue to accept substitutes without striving for realities. Content makes a trained individual swallow vinegar and try to smack their lips as if it were wine. Content enables a person to warm their hands at the fire of a past joy that exists only in memory. Content is a mental and moral chloroform that deadens the activities of the individual to rise to higher planes of life and growth. A person should never be contented with anything less than the best efforts of their nature can possibly secure for them. Content makes the world more comfortable, but it is the death knell of progress. A person should be content with each step of progress merely as a station, discontented with it as a destination, contented with it as a step, discontented with it as a finality. There are times when a person should be content with what they have, but never with what they are. And pleasure. Pleasure is temporary. Happiness is continuous. Pleasure is a note. Happiness is a symphony. Pleasure may exist when conscience utters protests. Happiness never can. So what is a real thing? Jordan tells us that happiness represents a peaceful attunement of a life with a standard of living. It can never be manufactured by the individual for themselves alone. It is one of the incidental byproducts of an unselfish life. No one can make their own happiness the one object of their life and attain it, any more than they can jump on the far end of their shadow. If you would hit the bullseye of happiness on the target of life, aim above it, place other things higher than your own happiness, and it will surely come to you. You can buy pleasure. You can acquire content. You can become satisfied. But nature never put real happiness on the bargain counter. It is the undetachable accompaniment of true living. It is calm and peaceful. It never lives in an atmosphere of worry or hopeless struggle. The basis of happiness is the love of something outside the self. Search every instance of happiness in the world, and when all the incidental features are stripped away, you'll always find a constant, unchangeable element of love. Love of a parent for a child. Love of a man and woman for each other. Love of humanity in some form, or a great life's work into which the individual throws all their energies. Happiness is the voice of optimism, of faith, of simple, steadfast love. No cynic or pessimist can be really happy. A cynic is a person who is morally nearsighted and brags about it. They see the evil in their own heart and think they see the world. They let a mote in their eye eclipse the sun. An incurable cynic, Jordan says with unusual sharpness, is an individual who should long for death, for life cannot bring them happiness. And the keynote of Bismarck's lifelong unhappiness? His profound distrust of human nature. He had power without love, influence without openness, control without connection. And so despite everything, he never had one day of happiness. Now Jordan lays out the royal road. It lies, he tells us, in four things: consecration, concentration, conquest, conscience. Consecration is dedicating the individual life to the service of others, to some noble mission, to realizing some unselfish ideal. Life is not something to be lived through. It is something to be lived up to. It is a privilege, not a penal servitude of so many decades on earth. Consecration places the object of life above the mere acquisition of money as a finality. The person who is unselfish, kind, loving, tender, helpful, ready to lighten the burden of those around them, to hearten the struggling ones, to forget themselves sometimes in remembering others, is on the right road to happiness. Consecration is ever active, bold, and aggressive, fearing nothing but possible disloyalty to high ideals. Concentration makes the individual life simpler and deeper. It cuts away the shams and pretenses of modern living and limits life to its truest essentials: worry, fear, useless regret, all the great wastes that sap mental, moral, or physical energy must be sacrificed, or the individual needlessly destroys half the possibilities of living. A great purpose in life. Something that unifies the strands and threads of each day's thinking. Something that takes the sting from the petty trials, sorrows, sufferings, and blunders of life is a great aid to concentration. Soldiers in battle may forget their wounds in the inspiration of battling for what they believe is right. Concentration dignifies a humble life. It makes a great life sublime. In morals, it is a shortcut to simplicity. It leads to right for right's sake, without thought of policy or reward. It brings calm and rest to the individual, a serenity that is but the sunlight of happiness. Conquest is the overcoming of an evil habit, the rising superior to opposition and attack, the spiritual exaltation that comes from resisting the invasion of the groveling material side of life. Jordan's language here is the language of a person who knows from the inside what he is describing. Sometimes, he says, when you are worn and weak with a struggle, when it seems that justice is a dream, that honesty and loyalty and truth count for nothing, that the devil is the only good paymaster, when hope grows dim and flickers, that is a time when you must tower in the great sublime faith that right must prevail. You must throttle those imps of doubt and despair. You must master yourself to master the world around you. That is conquest. Even a log can float with the current. It takes a person to fight sturdily against an opposing tide that would sweep their craft off course. When the jealousies and petty intrigues and meannesses and misunderstandings of life assail you, rise above them. Be like a lighthouse that illuminates and beautifies the snarling, swashing waves of storm that threaten it, that seek to undermine it, that seek to wash over it. This is conquest. When the chance to win fame or wealth or the attainment of your heart's desire by sacrifice of honor or principle comes to you, and it does not affect you long enough even to seem a temptation, you have been the victor. That too is conquest. And conscience, as the mentor, the guide, and the compass of every act, leads ever to happiness. When the individual can stand alone with their conscience and receive its approval without using force or specious logic, then they begin to know what real happiness is. The person who is honestly seeking to live their life in consecration, concentration, and conquest, living from day to day as best they can by the light they have, may rely completely on their conscience. They can shut their ears to what the world says and find in the approval of their own conscience the highest earthly tribunal, the voice of the infinite communing with the individual. Unhappiness is the hunger to get. Happiness is the hunger to give. True happiness must ever have a tinge of sorrow outlived, the sense of pain softened by the mellowing years, the chastening of loss that in the wondrous mystery of time transmutes our suffering into love and sympathy with others. If the individual should set out for a single day to give happiness, to make life happier, brighter, and sweeter, not for themselves but for others, they would find a wondrous revelation of what happiness really is. The greatest of the world's heroes could not, by any series of acts of heroism, do as much real good as any individual living their whole life in seeking, from day to day, to make others happy. Each day there should be fresh resolution, new strength, and renewed enthusiasm. Just for today might be the daily motto of thousands of people everywhere, bound together to make the world better through constant simple acts of kindness, constant deeds of sweetness and love, and happiness would come to them in its highest and best form, not because they sought to absorb it, but because they sought to radiate it. And so we come to the end of William George Jordan's brief and luminous masterwork, The Majesty of Calmness. What has he told us? He has told us that the highest quality a human being can possess, the rarest and most powerful, is not intelligence or talent or ambition or even kindness. It is calmness, that deep-rooted, unshakable peace that does not deny the storms of life, but weathers them from a place of inner steadiness. He has told us that hurry is the enemy of everything that matters, that the great works of life and character and love are built slowly, the way oaks are built and not mushrooms, the way philosophies endure and not fads, and that the person who can accept slow growth will find that the results are sure. He has told us that we are always influencing the world around us, whether we mean to or not, and that the invisible radiation of our real character reaches further and lasts longer than anything we do consciously and deliberately. He has told us to stand on our own 2 feet, not in arrogance, but in dignity, to fight our own battles, to develop our own powers, to compete with our past selves and not with our neighbors, to be an oak and not a vine. He has told us that failure, which we dread so deeply, is very often the very mechanism by which life prepares us for something we could not have reached any other way, that the caterpillar's death is the butterfly's beginning. He has told us to do our best at all times, in the smallest and the largest things, because the person who lives their best in private will never have to scramble for grace in public, because it is never too late, because the path of truth and higher living is never shut until we close it ourselves. And he has told us that happiness, that elusive thing we spend so many years chasing, is not found by pursuing it. It is found by pursuing something else, something higher, something beyond ourselves. The hunger to give, the life lived in consecration, concentration, conquest, and conscience. The simple, daily, radical decision to make the world around us better, not because we will be rewarded, but because that is who we choose to be. These ideas are more than a century old, and they have never been more needed than they are today. Take them with you, not as theory, but as practice, not as something to admire, but as something to live. Do the thing under your hand right now in the best way you can. Bring all the light you have to this present moment and leave the rest with confidence and trust to the great forces that are larger than any of us. The majesty of calmness is not something given to a lucky few. It is the inheritance of every human being who is willing to earn it one quiet, steady, honest day at a time. Thank you for listening. If this recording brought something of value to your day, please consider subscribing to this channel so you can be notified when new recordings are added. Classic works of wisdom like this one deserve to be heard by as many people as possible, and your support makes that possible. Subscribe, share with someone who might need these words today, and come back whenever you need to be reminded of what you are truly capable of. Until next time, go well, go calmly, and go with purpose.